All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about a practice in beekeeping that, I gotta say, sounds a little intense at first. We're talking about intentionally clipping the wings of a queen bee. Now, this is a technique that takes a super steady hand and, a real understanding of how a hive works. But why on earth would you do this? And that's the big question, isn't it? The queen is literally the heart of the colony. She's the mother of every single bee in there. Her ability to fly just seems, well, essential. So the idea of grounding her feels completely backwards. But, as we're about to see, this isn't about hurting her. It's actually a very calculated move for the good of the entire hive. So, let's peel back the layers on that question. This whole procedure isn't something a beekeeper just decides to do on a whim. Nope. It's a direct solution to some of the biggest headaches a beekeeper can face. It's all about proactive management, about giving a colony its best shot at success.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Each of these reasons solves a very specific problem. The biggest one, for sure, is swarming. When a hive gets too big, the queen literally just takes off with about half the bees to go start a new home. But if her wings are clipped, she can't fly. The swarm just can't happen. Then you get this incredible level of control over genetics. You can stop a new virgin queen from taking her mating flight. This forces her to lay only unfertilized eggs. And in the bee world, that means you get all male drones. Perfect if you're running a specific breeding program. And, of course, if you've invested in a pricey, artificially inseminated queen, clipping her wings is basically an insurance policy to make sure she stays right where you need her.
Okay, so how is this actually done? You might be picturing some kind of complicated, intense operation, but the process itself is surprisingly straightforward. That said, simple doesn't mean easy. It requires total calm, a ton of precision, and a whole lot of respect for this incredibly important insect. Let's walk through it. First, and this is crucial, the queen has to be held gently but securely. And believe me, how you hold her is the most important part of this whole thing. We'll get to that in a sec. Next, you use a pair of small, sharp scissors. Think embroidery scissors. With those, the beekeeper just clips the very tip of one of her front wings. Some people do both, but honestly, just trimming one is enough to throw off her balance and keep her from flying. And that brings us to the single most important rule in this entire procedure. I'm not exaggerating, because getting this next part wrong can have absolutely disastrous results, not just for the queen, but for the whole colony that relies on her to survive.
So here it is, the golden rule. You always, always hold the queen by her thorax. That's the middle part of her body, right between her head and her abdomen. It's the strongest part of her body, kind of like a little armored shell.
And this right here shows you exactly why that rule is so important. Holding her by the thorax gives you a safe, stable grip, and it doesn't squish any of her vital organs. The alternative? It's pretty terrible. If you grab her by the legs, you can easily injure her, but grabbing her by the abdomen, that big, soft, final section of her body, is catastrophic. That's where all her delicate reproductive organs are, including her ovaries. This really says it all. One little squeeze in the wrong spot can permanently wreck the queen's ability to lay eggs. And a queen who can't lay properly, well, that's basically a death sentence for the colony. Her whole job is to keep the hive populated. Harming her ability to do that creates a ripple effect that weakens the entire superorganism. Now, for any beekeepers out there thinking, there is no way I'm steady enough to handle the queen directly, I get it. And the good news is, technology and techniques have come a long way. There are tools and best practices out there designed to make this whole thing way less stressful for everyone involved, bee and beekeeper. And that's where the clipping cage comes in. This thing is a brilliant little invention. It basically lets you gently trap the queen against the honeycomb. It has a grid with little openings that are just big enough for her wings to poke through, so you can make the clip without ever actually having to pick her up. It just completely removes the most nerve-wracking part of the process and pretty much eliminates the risk of hurting her. So what about after the deed is done? Well, the best thing to do is not to just plop her right back into the hustle and bustle of the hive. Instead, it's a really good idea to put her in a small cage for a little while, but inside the hive. This just lets her calm down, and it gives the other bees time to get used to her scent again, making sure everybody welcomes her back peacefully. So when you boil it all down, it really comes to this. This one tiny little action, as long as it's done right and for the right reasons, is an incredibly powerful management tool. It's a way to protect your investment, keep your hive strong, and even guide the colony's genetic future. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This practice is a crystal clear example of humans stepping into a natural cycle to manage it for productivity. And look, it's super effective. But it makes you think, in our role as caretakers of these amazing creatures, what's the right balance between intervening and just letting nature do its thing? That's a question every beekeeper really has to answer for themselves.